My excitement for Assassin's Creed Valhalla has shifted 3 times this year. I went from being extremely excited about the game to feeling meh about it, and finally to my current state, which I'd call simply curious. I'm not entirely sure why my excitement shifted so many times, but I remember at one point I even reached a stage where I was thinking of skipping out on Valhalla entirely. However, after recently spending some time watching gameplay from people who had the opportunity to play it early, I noticed a few things that left me rather intrigued by the game. There were some things I saw that was sufficient enough to convince me to pre-order Valhalla. But they weren't only good things that I saw. I also took note of a few things in the game that I hope the developers will improve upon. So in this video I want to talk about some of the stuff that excite me and some of the stuff that worry me. So without any further ado, let us jump right in. Now, I might be mistaken about this one because it's been a while since I last played Odyssey. But if my memory serves me well, I remember Assassin's Creed Odyssey's rendering distance being incredibly poor. Sometimes when exploring, you would literally see the circle around you where the rendering would stop. And though I won't call this issue game breaking, it does make it more difficult to get fully immersed in the game's world. It's an eyesore, and it doesn't have to be. So when I recently spent some time watching Valhalla's gameplay, this was an element that I was actively looking out for because I would love for it to be improved. And based on what I've seen, it does appear that Valhalla has better rendering and drawing distances. There are still pop-ups, but it seems less aggressive than in Odyssey. And if that is the case, it is definitely an improvement that I can be excited for. The next aspect on my list include exploration and discovery. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Ubisoft's video games and how they have a tendency to guide and assist the player towards most of the elements within the world, leaving very little room for natural discovery. While this is not a bad thing necessarily, I'm sure you can agree with me that for the most part, it's much more rewarding and exciting to find stuff in the world naturally. From what I've seen in some of the videos I've watched, it appears that Assassin's Creed Valhalla does have a layer of the world dedicated to natural discovery. While hand-holding still seems to be apparent in the game, it's nice to see that some things are left entirely unmarked for the player to find on their own. I think this will make exploration in Valhalla significantly better and much more exciting than its predecessor. Another thing that I picked up on involves an improvement in scaling and in the general atmosphere of cities or towns. Though it was difficult to tell given that I watched a gameplay video instead of actually playing the game. But for one, the buildings and landmarks in Valhalla look significantly bigger in scale. Cities and towns felt much livelier than the towns in Origins and Odyssey, and I think this is in large part thanks to the sound design, which sounded significantly better in quality. In the video that I watched, it did a great job at creating a densely populated sounding city, which wasn't something I really got in Odyssey and Origins. So I hope what I saw and heard was accurate, because I'm all for immersion, and some of those scenes I witnessed sold the atmosphere incredibly well. The next thing I want to talk about is probably not something that most people care as much about. However, it is an element that I really enjoy in video games, and that is when locations are given narrative context through notes. This was a feature that was present in Origins to some extent, and seeing it return in Valhalla after being absent in Assassin's Creed Odyssey is really exciting. I love stumbling onto a location or event that reveals an interesting story about it. I cannot tell you why, but I love when world building is done this way. It really helps shape the world that you explore and creates an incredible atmosphere for me personally, and so I cannot wait to bask in this feature when Valhalla finally releases. Through my many hours spent watching Valhalla gameplay videos, I saw something really interesting regarding an enemy who tried blinding Ivor with sand while in combat. And this reminded me that one of Valhalla's key features include having the most diverse enemy variety in an Assassin's Creed game to date. I remember one of the developers on the game explained that enemies would make use of their environment to attack Eivor. This sand throwing technique I witnessed was obviously one of those attacks, and I am really excited to see what other techniques or sly moves enemies will come up with to gain an advantage over Eivor. I've mentioned this before, but tombs in Assassin's Creed have always been some of my favorite things to do. However, there was a significant dip in quality when it came to tombs in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. For the most part, they weren't as interesting as I'd like them to be, and they felt more like a chore to do rather than something exciting to pursue. However, this time round, it appears that the quality of tombs in Valhalla are significantly better. Not only do they look more visually interesting and like there's actually thought and care put into them, but they also appear to be much more exciting. There was one particular video I watched where a YouTuber was exploring a tomb, but instead of just running in and acquiring an ability point like in Odyssey, this tomb had a bit more to it and required much more from the player. If I'm not mistaken, it required the player to find 3 unique weapons scattered within the world that, once obtained, can be placed within 3 separate slots on a statue of some sort within this tomb, which then obviously unlocks some sort of reward. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this approach to me is an improvement over Odyssey's tombs. It sounds and looks much more exciting. Let us just hope we're not rewarded with a simple ability point, because that would be disappointing. I feel like the reward behind this tomb is what's gonna make or break it. But overall, it is a step up over Odyssey's tombs. Then let's talk about the stuff that worry me. Well, it's actually just one thing, at least for now, and that is the animations in cutscenes and cutscenes in general. Some of them looked pretty decent, however, I did spot a few that felt rather cringy, unnatural, and off-tone. To show you what I mean, I'll just give you an example.
You've done it, steward. A king now sits on the throne of East Anglia.
Don't leave yourself out of this song. We did it together.
Back to your dreams, then, of fire and Helheim.
I lost my way some time ago. Hard to say when. I don't want to be here. I never did. This was Halfdan's dream. He ordered me to see it through. In my dreams, I'm sailing, remember? Wind in my beard, salt on my lips. I want that life again. Whether or not I find it, only time will tell. Until then, let us feast, drink, and forget our pain!
I hope I'm not the only one, but that scene is a tad weird. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't feel normal or natural. This isn't the quality that should be present in AAA games, so I do feel like this is something that Ubisoft needs to iron out. Otherwise, it's going to be incredibly difficult to take some of those moments seriously. So there you have it. These are a few things that I'm excited for, and one thing that worries me. Let me know what you guys think of Assassin's Creed Valhalla in the comments down below. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in another one hopefully soon. Thank you for watching.